Today, we give out our grades and awards for the 2024 season. Join us to see who our team MVP was and who was the biggest disappointment for us.
Yeah, I've been wanting this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Hey. Yeah. Ain't no errors, baby, it's a new era. I wake up early feeling rich like I'm cash.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Sounds Gouda. My name is Jordan Olson, and my co-host and best friend over here is Rob Ralph. We are obviously into the off season, and we're still planning on bringing plenty of good Packers content to you. Right now, we're still on a Wednesday, Saturday schedule, and you can find our content on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So thanks everybody for being here and listening. Before we get into our grades and awards, I really wanted to take a few moments to recognize a Wisconsin sports legend and great and Bob Uecker. And he passed last week, and I didn't get a chance to get on and kind of give my condolences to him and his family. But Bob was a pretty cool and influential man in Wisconsin sports history and meant a lot to me and my family. So I don't know, Rob, you have any Bob Uecker stories you want to share, or anything that he meant to you?
Well, I mean, just what happened, this last off season and the totality of everything for the Brewers. And we know this is Packers podcast, but, thanks for letting us touch on this too. And I'm sure, like you and your family touched a lot of other Wisconsin, and not only that, but nationally, a lot of other families too as well. But last season, that playoff loss and how it ended, just really, I felt really devastated after that. And the way he gathered the players and told them, obviously, like, probably that this was coming, just makes that, even more saddening that they couldn't do something special. So rest in peace. And a complete Wisconsin legend is gone. And that's pretty sad. But
yeah, my family and I were recounting a lot in the group message afterwards, and just what he meant to us. When I was little, before they had all the games on TV, the best way to access all the Brewers games was to get on the radio and listen to Bob. And I remember it being like the 95 season, and like laying out in the backyard on a blanket and just listening on a hot summer's night with my dad, and really starting to get excited about baseball around that time. I was, 7, 8 years old, and, years of little weeknight fishing trips where we'd turn the Brewers on, and Major League was always such a, one of my favorite movies, like a comfort movie for me. And, Bob was a big part of all of that. So thoughts out to Bob Uecker and your family, and for all the special moments you provided to many Wisconsinites and Brewer fans and just baseball fans alike over the years. So, but with that, we're going to get into our season grades. So we haven't, this is our first full off season. So we'll see if this hits and we like it. Obviously, Rob and I have a lot of thoughts about the Packers. We consume 365 days a year, and we're still working on bringing some closure to this past season. And part of that is kind of our thoughts and grades. So we'll go through that. We're going to grade the offense, defense, Matt LaFleur, Jordan Love, Goody, and then we're going to give out some season awards. Yeah. So, Rob, you want to start us off? How did you think the offense did this year? What kind of grade did you give them in totality?
Yeah. I'd say, obviously, like in the beginning of the season, operated, a lot better, even with Jordan Love's injury, which is kind of crazy to say. Insert Malik Willis, more of a run first, heavily run first type of offense, both with Malik Willis, but Malik operated that very well, very efficiently, obviously with Josh Jacobs, who I'm sure that we'll touch on here in a little bit too as well. But, I would say throughout the season, it's like a C plus B, but if I had to give a hard push on it, probably a C plus. That's what it'll be for me. I mean, fifth in total offense, but, there's some notes in here as well, but stalled in big games. Injuries obviously will always kind of damper, your offense, specifically when you get some really big time players like Christian Watson that goes down. You brought up on the pod from before, but maybe the Packers team does operate best when it's a pass first, complementary run after that, with the Josh Jacobs.
Mm-hmm.
And that really gets Jordan Love and these wide receivers into a rhythm. And you know what? You might be absolutely spot on with that. This whole year I was hammering on trying to run the ball first, which in theory you think would help out passing game, but it didn't do too much for the offense. So C+ for me, Jordan. How are you feeling, and any other thoughts you bring into that?
Yeah, I mean, my first initial thought is that's just a little harsh for an offensive unit that finished in the top 5, right? And I mean, I know that perspective and context is everything. Clearly, we had some big games where they couldn't get going in the first half. And, we've talked a little bit. There's a lot of different things we could point to for that. But I think 5 straight games towards the, back end of the season that we scored 30 points or more. They're totally capable. I give the offense a B for the season. Obviously, if they could have started faster a little bit, more often in some of these games, I think we'd be talking about an A performance. But I think for most teams, if they finish the year and 5th in total offense and, 5th in, how top 5, top 10 in rushing and passing and all that, they'd be pretty happy. But B for me. So jumping over to the defense, I'll start on this one. You can let me know if you have any other thoughts. But I give the defense an A grade for the year. They improved all year. Jeff Hafley was obviously coming in and installing a new base 4-3 defense. Had a ton of rookies and new players, the likes of Edgerrin Cooper and Evan Williams, Xavier McKinney, Javon Bullard. And I mean, we finished the year safely as a top 10 unit. And I think in some metrics, a top 5 unit on defense, which is just absolutely incredible. So you can pick apart the D any way you want. But to see that kind of improvement, to go from a bottom, 25th, 28th in a lot of these categories and be in the top 10, that is probably the area that gives me the most hope for next year if our offense can get back to the 2023 form. So what are your thoughts on the D? What grade do you give them?
Yeah, obviously, hammering on the defense all season long. That's where Rob likes to live, is on that side of the ball. I'm going to give them a B+. I still think that this, as good as they are, and you obviously bring up fantastic points, I think that this can even turn and be even better for this next year. Insert a really, really good star, maybe pass rusher. I'm not saying we're going to get Max Crosby or Myles Garrett or anything, but what the heck that would do to our defense would be absolutely incredible just to think about as Packers fans, right? Which is fun to collaborate and debate about. But really good points with the rookies. McKinney coming in there obviously did really well for us. Loved what we got from Edgerrin Cooper. I thought that there was a lot of room for improvement for your Kenny Clarks. Granted, he got double teamed quite a bit. And TJ Slayton came on there towards the end of the year. Quay Walker, right? Everybody was hammering for him to come in and take that next step for him. And then all the injuries to the cornerbacks and how they continued to play well on down the stretch without other top cornerback and Jair Alexander, with your likes of Eric Stokes, Carrington Valentine, and Keyshawn Nixon as outside cornerback 1, as he wants to be. Pretty impressive. So solid. I'll go with the B+ for this year.
Yeah, and I'll just say, when I give these grades out, everything is contextual for me. I mean, I think now that they've set a certain bar, they've got to improve on that next year to achieve that same A grade for me, So Matt LaFleur, I think this is probably one of the biggest controversial points of this season. How did you rate Matt LaFleur's season? What kind of grade did you give him, Rob?
Yeah. So I think a good C+. I think that I'm good and aligned with a C+. Thought that there was some good, but overall in the totality, any bigger type of game, I feel like we got out prepared. The other team's details and preparation was better. The scheme, how they were attacking the Packers, it seemed like they were always a step or two ahead of us. Some decision making too as well. Like I've talked about this on the pod from before, but felt like Matt LaFleur was calling games not to lose rather than to win. Not that you absolutely have to be a Dan Campbell and always have to have your foot on the gas, but it really just felt like they were kind of in that gray area. Sometimes he was going for it, sometimes he wasn't, and it was just very kind of inconsistent. So I don't know, is the famed Matt LaFleur illusion of complexity losing its fire and flame? I don't know. I think next year would be pretty telling. But please, for the love of God, quit running Jaden Reed sweeps on 4th down. What about you, Jordan?
Yeah, I mean, C+ is the grade that I gave him. He won 11 games, got us into the playoffs. There were places where the team substantially improved from last year, and then there were places that we expect improvement from and, predicted that we would need certain results. And we didn't get there. And I mean, there's really only a couple key figures you can place blame on in those circumstances. We're going to be talking about them all in the next couple minutes. Is it Matt LaFleur and getting the group prepared and the play calling? Is it your star signal caller, or is it Goody and providing the pieces you need to be, or the ingredients to be successful, right? Matt LaFleur is kind of the chef in this instance, cooking the best recipe he can with the ingredients provided. He made a lot of good points there. I just think this was his worst season as a Packers head coach in terms of expectations. Last year, obviously, they had a worse record, but there were so many unknowns last year. You had the youngest team, and, we'll talk about this in an upcoming pod, but the Packers are not a young team in terms of experience anymore. And now Matt LaFleur, with the game plan that he creates, he cannot create execution for players, though, either. So I think he needs to do a better job of getting buy-in and making sure that these players understand that they can't win on talent alone. He either needs to be, and I don't know which one it is in totality, he either needs to be more creative in his play calling or have less indecision in his play calling, because he has so many options that he kind of gets paralysis on what to choose. So,
yeah, good points.
We'll see. So, Matt LaFleur, I'm still a big supporter of you. I think that next year, if we fail to meet expectations again and some of these things continue, we could fairly have some of that hot seat discussion. But anybody that wants Matt LaFleur's head right now, let's give him one more year to see how he can prepare this young team. Jordan Love. I gave Jordan Love a B- on the season. And there's a lot of different metrics and stats you can look at with Jordan Love. I mean, obviously, he was injured for what ended up being about 3 full games. He missed 2 half games and 2 full games due to various injuries throughout the year. Watching some tape and listening to some other media talk and podcasters, it's pretty apparent in those games that he was coming back from his knee injury, that the drive that he was able to create in his footwork was still creating a lot of misses for him. I'm probably, making him do some uncharacteristic things. So, I think the biggest things that he needs to do, he needs to work on his footwork. He needs to get cleaner in his drop back and decision making, but he's got to get fully healthy in order to do that. And, we've heard Matt LaFleur talk about it, but he needs to become a more vocal and imposing leader on this team. So the season felt like a little bit of regression from where he ended last year. But I still think that he has the ability to be a perennial top 10 quarterback in this league. And he was just outside that range for me in a lot of categories, despite him being 5th in EPA per play this year statistically. I don't know. What do you think, Rob?
I'm aligned with that grade. Yeah, that's pretty spot on for what I'm thinking. And I think one of the biggest caveats too for this is are we 3rd worst with drops this year or 2nd worst? Something like that. I mean, your receivers almost lead the league in drops. That's obviously going to kill plays, schemes, whatever it is, right? That's almost got to be one of your top priorities this year, along with all the other great points that you put on too as well. And I don't really know how you fix that. Just throw on the jugs machine. These plays all the time, But yeah, that's got to get fixed. And obviously that'll help your quarterback and his stats and his confidence and the scheme and everything. So I think that's a big one. His injury, you're spot on. That definitely affected him. And then he had that groin, injury in Jacksonville where Malik had to come in that second half. And who really knows how long that kind of lingered and lasted for. If you've ever done anything to your groin, you're always walking, right? You're always moving around, but it's pretty tender down there. So, and then the injuries throughout, then on down the season, right? Losing your Christian Watson. I really did feel like there was maybe some other opportunities to get other guys involved. Matt LaFleur is wanting Tucker Kraft to get more involved, right? I think that needs to be obviously more of an emphasis. Getting your best playmakers and good type of threats out there to be able to make plays for us. But he's got the talent to do it. Tom Clements is retiring now, so that's sort of a new quarterback coach, right? So we'll see how that makes a difference. It is a little bit of a regression towards the back end of the year, but there's a lot of different stuff that you already made a good point too that could have caused that. But I really hope Matt LaFleur can put him in better spots to succeed, get him in rhythm, maybe like we were talking about, do some more pass first type of stuff, and then marry that up with your Josh Jacobs or hopefully Marshawn Lloyd. We see a little bit of that next year, but I'll stick with that. I could probably keep going for a year on Jordan Love, but I like that grade.
Yeah, I think just to put a bow on that, I think they need to find a way to build confidence in his passing game. He's talked a lot about having confidence in his receivers on those deep balls, but for some reason there's just something, whether it's play calling or Jordan's Love decision making in throwing those shorter intermediate routes, and we need to be more consistent there. So, all right, the man who provides the ingredients, Goody, what kind of grade did you give Brian Gutekunst on his season?
Yeah, the man that's always consistently under duress for the picks that do or do not work out. I like what Goody does. I think he's a good GM for the Green Bay Packers. So there's the whole narrative of the first round picks never work out, blah, blah, blah. I think there's still a lot of time. But Jordan Morgan, Lucas Van Ness, you would have liked to definitely have seen take another step this year. I think we'll touch on that too as well. But, there's obviously some real criticism there for sure. But, he hit on Edgerrin Cooper. He hit on Evan Williams, right? We didn't see much of Kalen King from this last year, which, I think we could have both argued that we could have seen a little bit more of that. Katana Oladapo got in towards the end of the year in a kind of a meaningless game, but he looked like he fit, right? So, that's still a little bit too early to tell as far as that one goes. Marshawn Lloyd. Go ahead.
It's really hard to be critical. Honestly, I think Packers fans forget that it's really hard to find a NFL quality backup player in rounds, 5 and beyond. So, anybody that's really picking apart the 5th, 6th, particularly 7th round picks on whether they make the roster, contribute anything, right? Like,
yeah,
get real. If you hit on somebody in round 5 through 7 every year, like, you've already done an outstanding job, and he has a pretty good track record.
Yeah, and the other point to boot along with that as well this year, where would our team been without Malik Willis and Brandon McManus, right? Those are incredible signings, right? It took basically a try on a guy that was going through some legal and court issues, and Brandon McManus that got, cleared out or whatever, but still, that was a risk, doing what he did, knowing that the roster and the backup quarterback position, which without Malik Willis, we wouldn't definitely 3 games, right? The 2 that he came in for, and then the half for the Jaguars that he made that incredible, Y leak throw to Jaden Reed there at the end to have Brandon McManus kick that. So you keep talking about this too, and I think it makes such a perfect point, but you don't want the musical chairs of the GMs. You don't want to be the New York Jets. You don't want to be the Jacksonville Jaguars. And for what, you can get mad whether he spends money, whether he doesn't, and how he drafts and how he never, tries to trade pick, whatever, there's a extreme balance between patience and going for it in this league. And if you're too much that way, you're going to get screwed. If you're too much that way, you're going to get screwed, right? So I believe he does a really good job, and specifically this year with those 2 points, and then adding in probably the 2 biggest MVP consideration discussions for players in Xavier McKinney and Josh Jacobs. I think Brian Gutekunst is still a fantastic GM. Would we like to hit on more of these first round picks? Absolutely, but you can't freaking hit on everything. So, Jordan, I'll let you go ahead and take the floor.
Yeah, I gave him a B+ for the season for many of the reasons that you outlined. I think that he's a top 5 GM in this league, and despite whatever your strategy is, there are warts and downfalls to everything. Agreed. It'd be nice to hit on a first-round pick. I think it's a little fair to kind of critique over Morgan's injuries this year. I told a certain member of my family that if you think you can look inside a crystal ball and know if a player is going to get hurt and have traumatic injuries that affect them throughout their career or derail a rookie season, then you should be the number 1 advisor to every NFL team in the league. You would be paid.
Yes, you would. For
You'd
sure.
be handsomely paid. But ultimately a couple dings despite all the great things. I mean, obviously you mentioned the free agent pickups, and when Goody has gone and gotten free agents in the last 6 or 7 years, he has hit on nearly every one of them at a very high rate. They've either been starters or, in this case, Pro Bowl, All-Pro kind of players. And, that goes back to the likes of, the Smith brother. But yeah, I mean, he's been really good. And, you can have a lot of debate on whether we would have taken Cooper DeJean or Chop Robinson, which I was banging. Those were two of the 5 players that I really wanted to draft in the first round. And Jordan Morgan maybe had more of a second round grade for me. But man, Ed Chop Robinson, which had an outstanding year as our speed rusher with the guys we took, that would have been a hell of a fit. So, and you can't account for injury, but I think the offensive line and the cornerback depth did hurt us a little bit. You don't count on missing Ja, the way that you did as many games this season. But clearly in that last game, we were playing musical chairs at offensive line, and just bringing in Travis Glover, Kadeem Telford, the likes of them to play meaningful snaps. We see we have a little bit of room for improvement there. And even with the whole season of development, maybe a couple things for Goody to think about next year. The thing people have to remember is you can't accomplish everything in one off season. You only have so many draft picks. You only have so much cap. And you can't do it all. So B+ for Goody this year. So let's transition into our season awards segment. So Rob and I, we might have a little debate here. Maybe we'll be in total agreement, but the MVP candidates that I put forth, or that we put forth, and if you want to insert anybody else that we didn't put on the list, Rob, but really for me, it was Xavier McKinney or Josh Jacobs. So what's your quick argument for one of those guys, and who are you giving team MVP to?
Man, it's hard. It's a really, really hard one. It's literally flip of a coin for me. Both had a major impact, but since I'm hammering and I love the defense, and for what our safety room was the last billion years, and what Xavier McKinney did to get interceptions and shut down any deep shots for opposing teams, I'll go Xavier McKinney, but I really wanted to go Josh Jacobs too. So,
yeah, that one's really tough. I want to split the vote on that, because I almost want to lean into Josh Jacobs for what he did. But, here's the way I'll think of this, is I think that, and this is not, this is really hard, because without Josh Jacobs, we would have had a lot of the offense we did. But because of Josh Jacobs, I feel like we almost hindered our passing game a little bit. And that's not his fault. It doesn't take MVP away from him. But we'll go with Xavier McKinney. That's the Sounds Gouda 2024 MVP. He was all pro, changed the ability of everything we do on defense. So Xavier McKinney is Sounds Gouda 2024 MVP. So offensive player of the year, Rob, my candidates I put down were Josh Jacobs and Zach Tom. Those were really the two biggest considerations. I know it's hard not to put the team quarterback in that conversation, but we've already outlined that he didn't quite get there for us this season. So Josh Jacobs or Zach Tom?
I'm going to make this really quick. Josh Jacobs, I mean, best running back since Amon Green easily, with the season for what he had. Wasn't his fault that, the wide receivers didn't end up, it didn't end up helping our receiving game, I should say. So Josh Jacobs for me.
Yeah. Now, Zach Tom, he was, arguably the Packers' most improved offensive player this season. And I think that he should have been a second-team All-Pro, certainly a Pro Bowler. I know he was on PFS top 5 offensive lineman this year. So there's a great argument to be made for him. And, on a future show, we're going to talk a little bit more about Zach Tom, but I think that they got to get him locked up. But yes, Josh Jacobs, obviously in the conversation for team MVP, most reliable player on offense. He's Sounds Gouda's 2024 Offensive Player of the Year. I think our Defensive Player of the Year, as much as he'd maybe like to have a discussion about Edgerrin Cooper, he wasn't on the field every game. He wasn't an All-Pro. To me, I don't know that there's a lot of discussion, but I think Xavier McKinney, being our team MVP, he's clearly our defensive player of the year. Do you have any other discussion to be made there, Rob?
I think if Edgerrin Cooper has the totality of the full season to go through and, heck, he could win rookie defensive player of the year if that were the case, right? But what a promising young star he's going to be. And I'm super excited if we can get another, young athletic linebacker maybe, next to him as well. Another Edgerrin Cooper-like. But you're spot on. Xavier McKinney is our team overall going to be a Packers MVP. He's got to be the defensive player MVP too.
Yep. Specialists of the year, we've already talked about him on this show. Again, there's not really dispute. I mean, Daniel Whalen kind of had an average season. I'm not putting a long snapper on this, but clearly without the work of Brandon McManus, I think he only ended up missing, was it 1 field goal or was it 2 field goals on the season for us, Rob?
I think it's 2 field goals, but anybody in here, correct us if we're wrong on that.
I think it's 2 because there was a regular season one, and then obviously the one in the playoff game, right?
Yeah.
But he brought stability to that group for us, and now we're going to be trying to, I think, lock him up at least for next season to make sure that we have some continuity as we try to make this championship push. But yes, the very controversial but very great kicker, and I'm happy to have him. Brandon McManus is our specialist of the year. So rookie of the year, I think we have a little bit of this room for discussion here, but the candidates that we put down were Edgerrin Cooper and Evan Williams. So where do you lean into this one, Rob?
Man, I think it's a tale of 2 seasons, right? Williams is coming in, or not right quite away at the beginning, but like more towards the beginning of the season than Cooper, who's in the recent part of my mind. Obviously, they're towards the end of the season. Had a heck of a season too, and this one's tough. This one is really, really hard. I will slightly lean towards Edgerrin Cooper, just what he's able to provide there at that linebacker position. Quite incredible. He's very fast, very elusive, can run down fast running backs too as well, screen games from opposing offenses and whatnot. So I think he's going to be a stalwart, and he's going to be a star there in the middle of that defense. So give me Edgerrin Cooper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I have a lot of excitement for Evan Williams, but we've talked about this mid-year, and I think whatever Edgerrin Cooper can do when he's healthy totally transforms a lot of things about this defense. I think having Evan Williams at the back end is going to be a great partner for Xavier McKinney for many years, but as you alluded to, Edgerrin Cooper could have been NFL Defensive Player of the Year if he would have been on the field 2 or 3 more games. And he's an easy pick for me when it's all said and done for Packers. Sounds Gouda, Defensive Rookie of the Year. Well, really, Rookie of the Year in general. So, who's your most disappointing player, Rob? A couple guys I had on the list. Lucas Van Ness, Kenny Clark. Do you have any others for consideration?
I mean, Quay Walker, there's a little bit of an argument for him. He did have, 3 pretty, solid games there towards the end of the year, and then got injured. And so we don't know if that would have kept, going on. But there's definitely an argument for Quay Walker in there. But I think for sure Lucas Van Ness, if he would have taken the next step, if he would have provided some really good pass rush capabilities for the Packers, alongside Rashawn Gary, it would have made an absolute monstrous thing for this Packers defense. So, and he was drafted in the first round as well, like we talked about from before. But I just feel like, Rudy took him, in year 2, trying to take that next step up with the tools I think he was going to try and develop. It's Lucas Van Ness for me, because I think the most disappointing part of the Packers team this year was definitely the pass rush for me.
Yeah, you just expected a lot more out of him in year 2, and he did not get there, and I'm in agreement. Kenny came on a little bit at the end. I wasn't, overly displeased with Quay Walker's. I think Quay Walker had a really good back half of the season, and now I'm not going out and giving him his 5th-year extension, but I really think that, he played fine. But Lucas Van Ness, I think something's telling, though, and I still have a little bit of hope for him. The Packers defensive line coach, recently lost his job, Jason Reverovich, and they're talking about hiring somebody new. It sounds like a lot of people involved, and I'm not trying to put all the blame on him, are really expecting that change can do a lot for this defensive front. So We'll be talking defensive line coach candidates coming up here in the future, I'm sure. But we need more out of the LVN. So LVN is our Sounds Gouda most disappointing player of 2024. 2 more awards, kind of some fun ones. We've got our glue guy award. So maybe the guy who, is the best teammate or kind of stirs the drink, so to say. So the 2 nominations that we put forth, or I put in here, Rob, Tucker Kraft or Christian Watson. And if you have any other nominations, throw them out there.
Well, I think Jacobs and McKinney, right, were obviously stalwarts within that culture of that team and brought a lot of glue to this too. But we've talked ad nauseum already to them, and there's obviously a ton of other players. Christian Watson, for sure, I think that's going to end up being my pick. Just what he's gone through, generally as a player and as a person. But, he never spoke out. He was a team player. He always ran his butt off on his routes. He always blocked really, really well, more than a few times in every single game. You're always seeing him giving a ton of effort and blocking, and just what he meant to this team. He's a high impact player. He meant a lot to this team. Wasn't a lot of drama, got people together. So Christian Watson's that guy.
Yeah, and I think I lean into that too. You see Tucker Kraft's leadership emerging on and off the field with the things he's doing and saying. But the thing that won it for me for Christian Watson was how he handled and helped with the Romeo Doubs situation. You could see that he was the first guy to go over and put his arm around him, stick up for him, celebrate with him. And it would be easy to cast your teammate aside, especially in a situation where it would be advantageous for you to be on the better end of more targets, more yards, more touchdowns. And he was a team player in that. You can see I think the impact he makes. Another telling thing is that Matt LaFleur had a list of 10 or 11 guys that he goes to. Kraft is on that list, but Watson was the guy from the receivers room that Matt LaFleur goes to get the pulse of the locker room, what's going on. So, Christian, I hope you get healthy. And it sounds like maybe around week 12, week 13, we could see you next season. So, keep being the guy you are. But Christian Watson is Sounds Gouda's 2024 glue guy. Our last award, tough guy. I don't know if you got anybody else, but, 2 offensive players here, Tucker Kraft and Josh Jacobs, were my nominees. You got anybody else to add?
No, I'm sure I might be missing someone, but hard for me not to give this to Jacobs. But I'm gonna go Tucker Kraft in this one. He's utilized him a little bit more towards the end of the season. I was really loving those Tucker Kraft tush pushes, which you're in the middle of taking the snap on those balls, you're going to get absolutely murdered. But he just, he means a lot to this team. You could easily give this award to Josh Jacobs, but he was looking for contact. He was a leader in the locker room. He was, or he's going to end up being, he already is a really good tight end, but a superstar tight end in my opinion, and love to take on good contact too as well. But it's Tucker Kraft for me.
Yeah, I'm going to give it to Kraft, Yak and Cheese as well. Just love his mentality. Both guys very well deserving, and it's hard not to think about the Josh Jacobs run where he stiff-armed Marshawn Lattimore, and, he's calling for contact, and he's running with people grabbing his shirt, and his shirt stretched out like what seems like 5 yards. Both of them have tough guy mentality. But I think that Tucker Kraft is the guy I want to give this award to as well. Maybe just a little bit of sharing the love, because we've already given Josh Jacobs a lot of love. But
yeah, for sure.
That's what we got for you, team.
Yeah, well, we appreciate everybody coming in, taking a listen to us. Just know that we do have, like we alluded to at the top of the show, episodes every Wednesday, Saturday in Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Make sure to give us a like, sub, and follow us on those platforms. If you know another Packer fan or two that would like to nerd out just as much as we do, please make sure to send them our way. We hope you had a good off-season so far. We're all looking forward to a new and more Packers content coming up here. Let us know what you think. Do you have a different grade? Do you have anything that you disagree or maybe agree on, or maybe we missed a player or two maybe that you'd like to touch on too? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks, Packers fans. We hope that you have a Gouda morning, a Gouda afternoon, and a Gouda night. Take care. Go Pack Go.
Go Pack.
You gotta go.
Been wanted this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Okay. Hey.